29th of the 10th, 2024. The time is 14 minutes past 8. And there is one item today on the docket, and that is, of course, Maximilian Verstappen, because everyone, and I mean everybody in F1 is rounding on that chap. Nobody's got anything good to say. And this goes from George Russell, King's George Russell, first of his name, Lewis Hamilton too, of course, Martin Brundle, elder statesman Damon Hill, and so too Lando Norris. Let's talk about F1 Elvis first. Mark Priestley has had this to say, that he's unhappy with Max Verstappen because he was out of control and it was a major safety concern as far as the turn 7 incident between himself and one Lando Norris. Oh, the humanity. The verbiage is key here. Each and every single time, I feel like it's hyperbole when people are talking about it. Was turn 7 dangerous? You can argue that back and forth, right? This is a conversation that will last all day and night. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure whether it was dangerous. Was it very aggressive? Absolutely. Does Max Verstappen like to rub up, indeed step over the line from time to time? 100%. Does Max Verstappen utilise, even weaponise fear against all of the other 19 drivers potentially? And that's what George Russell says, is speak to them. That's why they want to institute for some change, material ones, in the guidelines, the guidance that the FIA use to prosecute, indeed mete out penalties. Here's what George had to say. I think the stewards are totally on board with what needs to change, that there needs to be change, clearer rules governing what you can and can't do in the one that F's around overtaking. George continues that our view is this, as follows. I think the biggest discussion is they wanted to wait until 2025 so it's something consistent throughout the year. Again, lest we forget that the mantra is that they're going to try and change this before the Qatar Grand Prix. Be more specific, get their very robust regulatory arms around the behaviour on track, because it is chaos. It has been consistently inconsistent for the longest time as far as FIA and F1 are concerned. Please see, as near as it makes no difference, every single bloody race in 2021. I've argued on many occasions, as far as Max Verstappen is concerned, don't hate the player, hate the game. The race wrote that he was the Adrian Newey of F1 peddlers, and at the time I would see them that and raise them this. He's a tax avoider of an F1 peddler. Indeed, he has the capacity and the not insubstantial ability to operate and move, navigate his way through the grey areas, filtrate out for these. Then I put forth FIA, and nobody has themselves a problem. I can't believe that they're only just having this conversation now, not 3 or 4 years ago on the back of 2021 and Abu Dhabi and all that was controversial in that circumstance. George Russell, first of his name, continues. I would say that 19 of 20 drivers said, well, if it's incorrect currently, then make the change in the FIA guidance today, now. George says, I'm glad to see those incidences were pushed or were punished even. And I suspect moving forward in Brazil, what we saw today as far as the turn 7, turn 4 incident between Messrs Verstappen and Norris, and what we saw last week at Kota, that you won't be able to get away with that. You presume, says George Russell, that it would be easy to change for these FIA guidelines, but it sometimes seems more difficult than it is to get things in writing, to get them approved, because you've got to vote by app. But as I said, George continues that 19 of 20 drivers are aligned. They know what needs to be done, instituted as far as the rules and the regs and the guidelines in order to solve for this circumstance. That, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos. I put forth to you this non-rhetorical question. Who do you think the one was that disagreed with the changes? George Russell bookends his statement thus: at the moment you're seeing a number of manoeuvres that are just, well, it's getting a bit beyond entertaining or beyond sporting. It's just almost unfair to a point now. You can argue the first one, as far as Max Verstappen and Lando Norris turn 4 settings, that was 60-40 as far as culpability. The last one, however, King George of Kingsley, Norfolk, utters the turn 7 incident between Messrs Verstappen and Norris. George characterises as follows: I've not seen anything like that probably since 2021. Oh, the humanity. And elder British biased broadcasters, of course, had to chime in. Martin Brundle said of the incident that Verstappen was ridiculous. Damon Hill uttered the following: that Max Verstappen was daft, he was silly, he let himself down, it is impossible for him to race fairly, that he's not even capable of it, that fair racing isn't in Max Verstappen, 3 soon to be 4-time champions repertoire, that his philosophy is that you're not coming past. Please see Ayrton Senna settings. He concurred also, he offered this also, that the sport doesn't build character, it shows character, that you wouldn't see if everybody drove like Max Verstappen on the current F1 grid, that you wouldn't see anybody overtaking, because overtaking needs to be a dance. There has to be give and take. Always a protective criticism or comment even from his team boss, one Christian Horner. Never, says Damon Hill, does Christian come out and criticise Max Verstappen. Ergo, he says, British biased media, Damon Hill says that Max Verstappen will always have free reign, unimpeded, unencumbered even by punishment, and that gets techie. Lando Norris had this to say. New comments from Lando. I hate the player. Incentivize. You guys are so techie. Here's what Lando had to say again. New comments that I've yet to speak to. Lando Norris said as follows: Max Verstappen's comments around the COTA Grand Prix. He said as follows, right? He said that he follows the rules where and as much as he can. That was Max Verstappen talking. Lando Norris said of that, I don't know how the wording of the penalties are and those type of things, but yeah, I mean, he says, Max Verstappen says that he drives to the rules, and as at last race weekend, that surely that hasn't aged very well indeed. Some say it's aged poorly on the back of turn 5, turn 7, as at the Mexican Grand Prix. Norris continues, that was his main thing that he said after last weekend, and today he took by going 4 wheels off the track. We'll see. Max will be back next weekend and expect just as many tough battles. And here's what Lewis Hamilton's had to say. Final topic upon the docket. Lewis Hamilton laughed at Max Verstappen over the Lando Norris incident, saying as follows about turn 7: I haven't seen the incident yet, but I could see a group of cars ahead and I saw a plume of smoke like dust, and I knew it was. I just knew it had something to do with Max Verstappen. Whilst laughing, the 39-year-old 7-time champion, Mount Rushmore of F1, Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton, said, like, I just knew for sure it was Max Verstappen. It's always a grey area, he continues. That's why Max has gotten away with that brand of driving, that very aggressive brand of driving, for so long. I experienced it many times with Max. You shouldn't be able to just launch the car up the inside and be ahead and then go off and still hold position. So bake this into the rules, therefore, FIA. And Martin Brundle again says of Maximilian Verstappen, 3 soon to be 4-time champion, that he feels he might be tainting his legacy with his particular brand of dangerous driving. I see why so many Max Verstappen fans around the world cite British bias in this. It feels like all of the commentators coming out and criticising Max just so happen to be British. Is this fueling their criticism then? Is all of what they're saying about Maximilian Verstappen a function of, no, by dint of the fact they're British, or do they just happen to be happening upon the objective truth in this? There is a line, and I feel like Max Verstappen for the longest time rubs up against that, but I will state again for the avoidance of doubt, what we don't want, as at the 29th of the 10th 2024, is F1 snowflakery. And I would argue that but for Max Verstappen's presence, F1 is a much more boring place. We need drivers like that, difference, aggression, reminiscent, of course, of Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Michael Schumacher setting Sebastian Vettel in his pomp. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Are we advocating, therefore, for F1 snowflakery? Institute for better rules, make the amendments in real time, FIA, and this problem will go away. But what we don't want is for aggression in these drivers, these chariots of fire settings. We don't want for them to filtrate that out to zero, because 100% you can take this to the bank. F1 will be vastly a poorer place, but for the absence of one Maximilian Verstappen, 3, soon to be 4 time champion. Oh, the humanity.